Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the Nerdic podcast. How are we this evening? My name is, as per usual, Bobby Salastar, and welcome to another edition of Nerdic Pro Weekly, episode in week number 156, a podcast made possible by our very good friends over at the ARWF. Currently, with me on the line is the SSP Extreme and one half the tag team champions, Mr. James Harris. James, how are we?
I'm doing all right, buddy. What about you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Not bad, thanks. I'd just like to start off by saying thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to appear here this evening.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, sort of like getting into sort of like grips with yourself, sort of like introduce yourself to the audience for like a fan of the podcast that may not know who you are. So yeah, like introduce yourself and sort of like get us into how you first discovered the world of professional wrestling.
So as far as me, I discovered pro wrestling back when I was a kid. I remember I was 3, 4, 5 years old watching guys like Stone Cold, The Undertaker, Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, guys like that. And it was always that I want to be those guys. I want to be those larger-than-life characters going out there doing this, entertaining people. And it was always a love of mine just from a very early age.
So when was it that you first decided to physically get involved with pro wrestling? When and where and why?
So I had made the decision. I was 10 when I just told my parents I wanted to be a pro wrestler when I grew up. And I had hit the age of 17, and I found out that there was a wrestling school that had opened up about 20 minutes from where I lived. And it was the Strong Style Performance Center, then known as Shooters Academy. And I got in contact with Billy Warlock, who was the owner, the trainer. He was the owner of Strong Style Pro, still is. And I messaged him and I said, hey, what do I got to do? This, that, and the other. And, well, that's history. I started training when I was 18, 19 years old, still in high school, made my debut in 2016, wrestled on my prom night, and that's how it all started.
So, do you remember your first training session then that you attended?
Oh, yeah. So that particular night, most of the students weren't there. I was like the only one that was actually there to train that night. Everybody else was either sick, hurt, something. And I got in, and it was me, and it was Stephanie Akash, and we got in there, and we start training. And I remember going through the bumps. I remember going through first time running the ropes. I remember the whelps that the ropes left. I remember getting hit with a kendo stick before I left. I remember all of it, man.
Yeah. So how long was it from when you first started training to actually having like your first like professional match?
So for me, let's see. I started training in November. So December, March. It's about 5 months before I had my first match.
Do you remember your debut match? And like, did it go well?
Oh, yeah.
What you can remember?
So I remember the match. I remember it was a good match. The crowd was really into it. It was me versus Psycho Carl, which that's a guy that has meant so much to my career over the years. It was in front of a sold-out house in Amherst, Virginia. We went out there, we did our match, and, I just remember beforehand being horrified, just being nervous, being scared, being antsy. I'm sitting there getting ready for, like, this debut, and my mom is sitting front row, my dad is sitting front row, my grandma, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, they're all sitting front row, and I'm like, okay, pressure.
Yeah.
And it was, oddly enough, it was Psycho Carl and J.C. Dykes Jr. sat me down beforehand and talked me through, hey, this is how it goes, they talked down that anxiety that I was feeling that night before we went out there.
Yeah. So, did you go over in the match, or was it your opponent or whatever?
Qualification.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. So, with like linking into your training and the actual match, had you discovered what you wanted your character to be at that point, or like was there still a few sort of like creative decisions going into it?
So when I first started, my character that I wanted originally when I started, and the character that I've grown into now are completely opposite. They are 100% different. When I first started, I wanted to be this big, energetic baby face. Like, I wanted to have the heart of John Cena. I wanted to be able to, like, come back for anything. Like, I wanted to be unbreakable. Like, I wanted to get knocked down 3 times, get back up 4. Like, that was what my original character idea was. And it's completely different than what I have now.
So, what would you say sort of best describes the character that you play currently?
So, cold, calculating, malicious, violent. If you want to get an idea of my character, like I said, watch some of my matches, but some guys that I try to so to speak, look at guys like John Moxley, like Bray Wyatt, like Sabu, like Ken Shamrock, guys like that.
Nice.
More on that
nice,
cold, calculating, do whatever I got to do to win side of things. And that played a lot more in my favor than the John Cena babyface thing ever did.
Yeah. So, would you say that you are, or you prefer playing the babyface character, or would you say that you prefer playing the heel character, or would you say that you're more of like an in-between sort of tweener sort of persona?
So a lot of times getting one over the other is kind of difficult because a lot of nights, even if I am being the heel in this scenario, there's still fans that love the kind of character that I play. So I kind of keep it towards that center line of I don't care who you are, I'm gonna get in there with you, and I'm gonna rock.
Yeah. So I'm aware that you've been wrestling since 2016. So that's what year are we now? 2024. So 8 years, right? So
yes.
So talk us through some of the bits and pieces that you've done since you first stepped into the ring, and like places you've been, people you've wrestled, etc., etc.
So my career to this point has been mainly Virginia because that's where I'm based. I've done a lot in North Carolina. I've done West Virginia. Of course, I always do branch out to other places. I'd love to get the chance to branch out to other places. That's just where I've been to this point. As far as like career highlights for me, it's really cool to think about because I started with Billy Warlock. And we were training in a storage unit, basically, originally. And so I went from this little kid that he was just training, still in high school, and I was a part of a lot of firsts as far as his promotion goes. I was in his first, his promotion's first last man standing match. I did their first street fight. I did their first I Quit match, their first mixed tag team match, their False Anywhere match. So I was at a lot of the forefront of firsts for him, and that to me was really cool to see. He grew to trust me with stuff like that. I've been to AIWF Mid-Atlantic. Went down there last year, had a banger of a match with Ty Tyson. Ty Tyson, one of my favorite dudes I've ever gotten in that ring with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rex Keller as Sons of Rebellion, at this point, 3-time tag team champions, 2 of which are in Strong Style Pro, 1 of which elsewhere. We went head to head with Black Society, with The Purge, with guys like Jack Tatum. So we've definitely been around the Mid-Atlantic scene and gotten to work with some of the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, so you say that you wrestled for the ARWF Mid-Atlantic against Tyson. I think that's the promotion that's run by Rick Diesel, the actual owner of the whole ARWF. Would I be correct in saying that? I think that's him, isn't it?
I know he's the promoter for Mid-Atlantic. I don't quite recall who is over AIWF as a whole. I don't know who's in charge of the world titles and all that stuff. I know Rick Diesel's in charge of Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah. I know that, so I believe the way and how it works out, so Rick Diesel's the owner of the whole ARWF, whereas it's Matt Classic, who I believe runs the whole the alliance side of things, is the chief executive director person, and
right. Okay.
So, he'll oversee, Greg Anthony, Clara Carter, who's just won the TV title, them, etc. And so so when it comes to sort of working with an organisation like the ARWF, you are an international organisation. If the opportunity ever came about with the ARWF or with someone else, would you like to get the opportunity to wrestle overseas and work in various other countries?
Oh, definitely, man. There's a bucket list miles long of countries and towns and states that I want to work in. When it comes overseas, I've always wanted to wrestle in Japan. I've always wanted to do Mexico. I've always wanted to do Ireland.
Jimmy Valiant, Boogie Woogie, man.
Legendary Boogie Woogie.
Wait a minute, baby. Wait a minute. Hang on.
What are you doing around
What was that calling you, buddy?
This is our neighborhood.
You done made a mistake.
You should be retired, Boogie.
Wait a minute, boys. Let me take a bite of my king dog.
You say king dog?
King dog?
Is that what he said? What? What happened?
Come on, boy.
Don't let hunger bully you. Get yourself a king dog and you too can become a super hunger fighter.
Secondhand Heroes and Home for Wayward Villains is a comic book shop and gaming store that also features Magic the Gathering and D&D. Located at 18184 Leesville Road in Evington, Virginia, Secondhand Heroes is your one-stop shop for you to get your nerd on. Open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. They don't close until the dice stop rolling. They buy, sell, trade, barter, and haggle, specializing in collectible toys, both vintage and modern, comics, Magic the Gathering, video games, console, and arcade cabinets to play, all set to free play. Host your game night with us. Monday night D&D video game competitions, and so much more. Something for the collector and gamer in us all. Call 434-317-0121 or shoot us an email with any questions to secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. Note, secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. That's 2ND, handheroesva@gmail.com. Come game with us.
So yeah, there's definitely a lot of places that, given the chance, I would gladly go work.
So, sort of speaking of the bucket list, then, are there any sort of certain specifics, so i.e., certain match types that you haven't worked in yet that you'd like to get the opportunity to work in? Any specific individual that you like to work with? Any specific promotion, etc., that you like to work for?
So as far as match types go, I have not gotten to step inside steel cage yet. I'm dying. That's like my bucket list now. Is I want to do a steel cage match before the end of 2025. Call me crazy. I want to do a barbed wire match down the road, just to prove to myself and to prove to everybody that I can do it. Because my whole character base is around being the toughest SOB you're going to meet, and I feel like that goes a long way in that. So that's definitely on the bucket list. An empty arena match, ladder match. There's definitely those there. And then as far as individuals go, there's several people independent wrestling wise that I'd love to step in there with. There's also like the bigger names that I'd like to step in there with. So when you look at independent wrestling, I'd love the chance to get back in there and do another match with Ty. That was one of my best matches last year. Like, I loved that match. There's Lazarus Black, who I've only been in the ring with one time before, and that was in a tag team. So there's Laz. There is Elijah Proctor. There's Evil Nate. There's White Mike. Diego Hill. There's a lot of the indies that I'd love to go in there and test myself with. And then when we look at the bigger teams, Darby Allin, John Moxley, because people say I resemble Moxley a lot when I'm in the ring. I'd love to be able to get in there with him. Josh Barnett, Ken Shamrock. There was Brody Lee. I would have loved to have gotten the chance to work with him. Unfortunately, not possible now. But we're on the list.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you got Randy Orton, who's been since I was.
So it sort of sounds like that you're sort of very involved when it comes to like hardcore stipulation sort of type matches. If the opportunity ever came up to work for like a combat zone wrestling or a game changer wrestling, you were sort of known for like the hardcore sort of stances, would you go and work for a company like them?
Oh, 100%, man. One of the things I've always prided myself on is being the guy that a promotion can call on. So, like, I'll do the singles work. I'll do the tag work. I'll do the hardcore work. I've always prided myself on being able to fill any kind of any person that calls me. So if Game Changer was to call me tomorrow, I would accept. Like, that would definitely be something I would do. I would do CZW if I was ever given the chance to do it.
Yeah. So, when it comes to sort of, like your sort of thoughts, views, opinions when it comes to the world of pro wrestling, what sort of advice would you have for someone who is either looking to get involved with wrestling or who's literally just started out when it comes to training? What sort of advice would you be able to give them to help progress their career when it comes to pro wrestling?
Toughen up. Find your thick skin. Get back up when you think you can't. Be knocked down, taking bumps. If you're doing a drill and you fall up the mat and you stay there, you've lost. Keep getting back up. Find resolve, that heart. Find what made you want to do this.
Yeah. So what sort of bits and pieces have you got coming up in the like in the calendar, like in the coming days, coming weeks, coming months, that people can look forward to seeing you at?
So at the moment, I'm not booked up for anything until January. I usually kind of just mellow out the last month or two of the year, spend time with family. Not to say if anybody called, I consider it. Yeah, but November through December is kind of that. I sometimes take that off and spend that time with my family. This is my daughter's for Thanksgiving. Her else that I'm going to want. So at the moment, I'm not booked up for anything until probably January.
So where can the listeners of this podcast, who probably is never heard of James Harris, where can they find you on various different social media platforms?
So Facebook is the main one. I am just horrible at using it. And I mean horrible. There's matches posted on like the Strong Style Pro Facebook page. If you go through you can find me on the network's Facebook page, Match with Ty, the Black Society's Facebook page for the tag team match we had, Ryan and Lazarus Black. Also the YouTube page, you can go and see our work over there. But Facebook is usually the best way to see everything, get all the information.
So if a promoter were to be listening to this podcast, what would be the best way to contact you if a promoter is interested in booking yourself for an upcoming show?
Shoot me a message, or I think my phone number is on my Facebook, so either shoot me a message or shoot me a call.
Sweet. So yeah, is there sort of so when it comes to sort of like your career as well, have you got any career highlights that you're sort of proud of that you've managed to accomplish so far? So
one of my best moments that I still think about to this day, it was a little bit better than a year after my debut, and I was doing a match with Psycho, and again, that's one of my most treasured feuds. We went out there and match, and here I am, only a year into my career, and got a standing ovation after our match was over. So I always thought that was pretty cool. 3-time tag team champions alongside Rex Keller, be it, the time we won them in Alta Vista, Virginia, or when we won Shockwave tag. There was also, we just regained the SSP tag titles a couple weeks ago at Amherst when we made our return and wrestled our first match as a tag team in almost 2 years. Being the first ever Strong Style Pro Extreme champion. Hold that near and dear. Getting to wrestle my trainer Billy. And I've had fans that told me that if guys like me and John Moxley were on the marquee, they'd pay to come see it. They would travel for that. I pretty cool because that's something. That's fans putting me at a level I didn't even know I belonged in. Yeah. Honestly, to me, I still don't know if I belong there, but that's fans putting me up on that caliber, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Honey Bun James.
Well, like, at least you've got sort of people that are willing to come to shows, willing to spend their money to specifically come and see you. And because at the end of the day, like, if they would just potentially think that your matches are pretty terrible, then like they wouldn't want to willingly go to a show. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
And like they wouldn't bother traveling and spending the money for tickets. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah. So what sort of legacy would you like to leave? So sort of when it gets round to it, right? If/when you hang the boots up, right? What sort of legacy would you like to leave to the next generation of stars?
So I want to be that hero that I saw when I grew up. I want to encourage somebody to pursue this. I want to make fall in love with this. And at the end of the day, when it is my time, toughest that ever been. I will be remembered as the that inspired little Johnny over here in the front row to pursue his dream of being a professional wrestler. I definitely, I want to be that hero for somebody.
Yeah. So, sort of, like again, like if it would come to it, whether it be before you decide to retire or whether it be afterwards, would you consider helping or like opening up your own training facilities, running your own shows, etc.? If the opportunity like was ever there to do so.
So, truth be told, I am actually very involved with Strong Style Pro, and I actually do assist Billy in training our new crop of students.
Right, yeah.
So, and I love our students. I love working with Billy, and I love where I'm at. So, as long as they have me there, I am perfectly happy where I'm at with that.
Yeah, sounds okay. Yeah. So and yeah, so and sort of like just like one final sort of thing before we call it a day with the podcast. Where can people find you on social media? What would be the best way to contact yourself, whether it be a media appearance, booking for a show, etc. And what have you got to say to the fans of listening to this podcast?
So the best way to find me, again, like I said, that's going to be Facebook. Reach out via message. I think my phone number's on there for anything like that. As far as to the people listening, keep loving wrestling, keep loving the product. Thank you for having me on. It's been awesome. Just keep letting it rock, man. Keep loving the product.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, obviously, James, thank you very much for coming on. I know that you've done a couple of podcasts recently, as well. So it's good to have you on here on the Nerdic Pro podcast. So yeah, this will be up on our Facebook page very, very soon, as well as on our YouTube channel, as well as going on the ARWF network within the next couple of weeks. So yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the Nerdic Pro podcast, my name is, as usual, been Bobby Salazar. With me on the line is the current Strong Style Pro Extreme and one half of the Strong Style Pro Tag Team Champions, James Harris. James, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I did forget to mention before we started recording, once I finish recording, we'll go back into the lobby that we were in before. And yeah, so, but yeah, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you all very much for watching. James, it's been a pleasure, and I shall be seeing you all
Yes,
later.
sir. Thank you.
Goodbye.